MSNBC host Rachel Maddow had some interesting thoughts to share with CNN in an interview about what the future might look like under President Donald Trump if he returns to office. Here's her comments. Jessica, why don't you read them?
She said, "I'm worried about the country broadly. If we put someone in power who is openly avowing that he plans to build camps to hold millions of people and to root out what he's described in subhuman terms as his enemy from within." Again, history is helpful here. He's not joking when he says this stuff, and we've seen what happens when people take power proclaiming that kind of agenda. She went on to say, "I think there's a little bit of head-in-the-sand complacency that Trump only intends to go after individual people he has already singled out. Do you really think he has plans to stop at well-known liberals? It also seems pretty clear that some people in politics might think they'll be on the safe side, that they might even benefit from it if they side with Trump. Ask Mike Pence about how that works out in the end." She continued on, and she did get weepy while delivering this. "When Trump invokes the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. military against civilians on his first day in office, do you think he then rescinds the order on day two? For that matter, what conveniences you that these massive camps he's planning are only for migrants? So yes, I'm worried about me, but only as much as I'm worried about all of us."
Camps. We're all going to be sent to camps, I guess. This is the first I'm hearing about this. Look, I think this is very characteristic of the Rachel Maddow hysteria approach to Donald Trump. There is plenty I disagree with Donald Trump on. I do not particularly rooting for him to return to the White House, nor am I at all rooting for Joe Biden to return to the White House. But Donald Trump's activities related to the election were very bad and potentially criminal, and now he's facing the penalties for that. I'm not here to defend Trump at all, but in the mainstream media liberal imagination, it's that Trump is raising an army to steal power and to put everyone in prison. And like what she's actually talking about are I think, like the kids in cages kind of immigration thing. Joe Biden, it's a tremendous policy continuity from Obama to Trump to Biden on that. So it's on some level it's gaslighting to say that Trump is uniquely fascistically dangerous in terms of the imprisonment and the camps and all that, and people just clearly don't believe it because they actually think Trump coming back. So many people think Trump coming back into office would be the most normal thing in the world, would be more normal than continuing with 4 years of Biden. And it's just people are not believing it. She's not going to get sent to a camp. She's going to get another television show and make even more money. Is what's going to happen. Is that the network is going to do fabulously well if Donald Trump is president again.
Rachel Maddow is saying this comfortably as someone who's a media personality, and then she goes on to say, "Well, I'm only worried about it for myself as much as I'm worried about it for everyone else." Yeah. That's ridiculous because of what you just said. We've seen this under Biden as well. Biden has deported a number of Haitians, over 20,000, which is more than the previous, or as many as the previous 20 years. Now at this point, I think it might be more because that was in his first 12 months. This is at the same time when the United States has decided to send troops through the United Nations to occupy Haiti because the regime is no longer friendly to the United States, which is something we spent a great deal of money and time on via the National Endowment for Democracy in 2004 when we decided to coup their democratically elected leader. So at a time when we are causing instability and trying to institute the kind of governance that is friendly to American global capitalism via the United Nations, really it's the US agenda we're trying to put in place militarily, with militarized police being present there. And we're intentionally deporting more Haitians than ever before to go back to the country. That's insane. That's happening under Joe Biden. What about those families? What about those people? Is Rachel Maddow going to cry for them? I think she should, because we also had President Biden promise on the campaign trail that no business should profit from the suffering of desperate people fleeing violence. He said this of people being held in camps under Trump at the border. But in July, more than 90% of the average 30,000 people under Joe Biden's administration held daily in ICE detention centers were housed in private facilities. As private corporate revenues from immigration detention centers are soaring, we're seeing ICE is giving money to these private prisons. That's where the revenue is going. Okay, so instead of these camps at the border that are run by ICE, these people are being put in private prisons under Joe Biden. That's what the ACLU's analysis has found. So this kind of like white privileged liberal view of like, oh, things were so bad under Trump. We had people in camps. When Biden's doing things very slightly differently, it's disconnected from the people most at stake.
Exactly, and he just did an executive order to do the exact same thing as the Republican plan, that he wants to deport, reject amnesty campaigns, claimants, shut down the border. Like I said, it's tremendous continuity on those things, and that's exactly what she's referring to when she describes this this coming fascist takeover. I mean, it's just so hysterical. You can just say, I disagree with his policies. She can think that there should be more immigration and there should be more bureaucrats running everything. Because another argument I've heard from the MSNBC crowd is, Trump has this plan to fire a lot of federal bureaucrats when he comes into office, and they're often describing that as fascism. I'm like, wait, if we elect a president and he fires a lot of the government employees that are not elected, isn't that on some level democratic rather than fascist? But they see it the other way. They think that the government employees there should be some permanent, the Fauci type people should just stay in their positions forever, facing little public scrutiny, growing the federal bureaucracy, violating our civil liberties, spying on Americans, crafting policy behind closed doors without the input of the legislature or the directly elected people. I think actually that is anti-democratic, but that view is not shared in the mainstream media.
I think what I would only be worried about in that scenario is if those bureaucratic positions in departments of government that are funded through public dollars and congressional budget allocation, which is the official process for how that should happen, that Congress should deliberate who's getting these funds, what departments, what programs are we establishing, what federal departments do we need to administer the programs, which policies we're passing to give money to fund. Are they, instead of that usual process, now going to be private companies providing those services? And are those private companies going to be subject to less governmental oversight from Congress because now they're in the private sector, not the public sector, and it's not Congress allocating those funds through their official processes? Because we do elect members of Congress, and we expect our members of Congress to do their duty of having the power of the purse and allocating the budget responsibly. That's some democratic control of the alphabet soup of all of the bureaucracy we have in DC. I think there are arguments to be made for it's become this animal. A lot of that work is contracted out to Deloitte and McKinsey and government and public services divisions already. It's already in the private sector, but I think that would be a big concern. And I think that's what liberals ignore. They're like, well, it's the government now, so it's all fine. When really, today, we've already seen the merging of the private sector and the public sector.
All right, more Rising right after this. Stay with us.